All right, so today we're going to take a deep dive into some pretty fascinating stuff about preparing for the second coming of Jesus. We're looking at this recent YouTube video by John and Lisa Bevere.
Okay.
And if you don't know them, they're like these big names in Christianity.
Right.
Huge following. And they've got this really interesting take on the whole thing, drawing parallels between the second coming and traditional Jewish wedding customs.
I've heard about that. Yeah.
Yeah, it's pretty interesting.
Yeah, I find it super captivating how they suggest that, we may be closer to the second coming than we realize.
Right. They come right out and say it like, we're the generation that can confidently anticipate Jesus' return.
Yeah.
And they tie it back to like a very specific thing that happened in 1948.
Yeah.
So I'm curious, what's the significance of 1948?
Well, 1948, that's the year that Israel was reestablished as a nation.
Okay.
And the Beveres connect that event to a prophecy from the book of Isaiah, where God asks, can a nation be born in one day?
Mm-hmm.
So they view that rebirth of Israel after, centuries of being scattered as a possible fulfillment of those prophetic timelines, like a sign.
Wow.
Signaling, significant step closer to the second coming.
Wow. That is some pretty interesting interpretation.
Yeah.
Like, it's kind of hard to wrap your mind around, right? Like, can you believe that we're the generation that gets to see this stuff?
It's amazing.
It's wild. But then, okay, so let's say they're right. How do we get ready for something that big?
Well, they use this this analogy of a Jewish wedding to kind of illustrate the importance of being ready. So in these traditions, the groom shows up at midnight. It's a surprise. Just like the bride needs to be, prepared for that moment at any time.
Oh, I see.
We need to be spiritually prepared for the second coming.
So it's like always be ready.
Yeah, it's about, not living in fear, but cultivating this like constant state of readiness.
I like that. I like that a lot. It kind of makes me think of the parable of the 10 virgins.
Oh, yeah.
Do you think could you kind of refresh our memories on that? What is that all about?
Sure. In that parable, Jesus tells the story of these 10 virgins who are waiting for the bridegroom.
Right.
And 5 of them are wise and 5 are foolish, right?
Okay.
All of them have lamps, but only the wise virgins, they thought ahead and brought extra oil.
So it's not enough to just like be there. You got to have something to keep your light burning.
Exactly. The Beveres argue that it's not just about like going through the motions of faith, but about actively nurturing our spiritual lives.
Okay.
Like, they suggest that the oil represents like, continually seeking opportunities to serve others.
I see.
Every act of kindness, every moment of prayer,
right.
It all fuels that fire inside you.
That's beautiful. It makes me think of that line from Jesus, my food is to do the will of him who sent me. Like, it's not about just looking good. It's about doing stuff.
Right.
Yeah.
It's about actually aligning our actions with our beliefs.
Absolutely. Yeah. Living it out, not just talking about it.
Yeah.
But I think we've all had times where it's hard to keep that fire burning bright, right?
For sure.
Like you feel your faith kind of dimming a little bit.
Definitely.
What do the Beveres say about that? What do we do?
Yeah, well, they actually address this directly.
Okay.
They refer to this passage in 2 Timothy chapter 1, verse 6.
Okay.
Where Paul encourages Timothy to stir up the gift of God within him.
Stir up.
Yeah. And they break down the original Greek word that's used for stir up.
Okay.
And they suggest that it actually reveals 3 very specific actions that we can take to, reignite that faith.
So 3 steps to basically like fanning those flames back to life.
Exactly.
I love it. Okay, so break it down for us. What's the first action?
Okay, so the first element of the word is Anna. And that emphasizes like the idea of repeating an earlier action.
Okay, so like going back to something you used to do.
Exactly. So like think back to a time when you felt like super close to God. What were you doing back then?
Yeah.
What were those practices, those experiences that, initially sparked your faith?
Right.
Maybe revisit those, like reignite that initial spark.
That makes a lot of sense.
Yeah.
Okay, cool. So what about the second part of the word?
Yeah, the second element is Zeus.
Zeus, okay.
Which is all about like enthusiasm and zeal.
Right.
So, the Beveres, they really emphasize approaching our faith with like vigor, with passion, serving God wholeheartedly, not out of obligation, but out of genuine like love.
Yeah, it's that like fire in your belly, not just going through the motions, but actually like really wanting to do it. Right?
Exactly, yeah. And then finally we have peer.
Peer. I feel like I should know this one.
Which of course means fire.
Of course, yeah.
Yeah.
Makes sense.
And that focuses on rekindling that inner flame through, a renewed commitment to God.
Okay.
It's about making a conscious choice to prioritize that relationship.
I'm really liking this breakdown. Like it's not just about having that one-time, spiritual experience. It's got to be something that you're tending to,
Yeah.
You're keeping that fire burning. Okay, so we've got those three actions. The Anna, the Zeus, the peer, like those are great. What are some other like key takeaways from their message? What else do they talk about?
Well, they also talk about this concept of the fear of the Lord.
Ooh, okay. That's a phrase that I think can be kind of intimidating for some people.
For sure.
So how do they explain that? Like what do they mean by that?
Yeah, well, they're careful to clarify that it's not about being terrified of God in like a punitive way, like he's going to punish you. It's more about like a profound reverence.
Okay.
An understanding of his holiness. And more importantly, like a deep longing to avoid separation from him. Mm-hmm. It's about understanding how big his love and grace are.
Right.
And then responding with awe and humility.
It's kind of like if you were standing on the edge of like a huge canyon.
Yeah.
You'd be in awe, but you'd also be like, okay, I don't want to get too close to the edge. Mm. But instead of being scared of falling, it's about understanding how deep God's love is.
Yes.
And not wanting to lose that connection.
Yeah, that's a great way to put it. It's about understanding that God is the source of all that is good. Mm. And that separation from him means losing that goodness.
Yeah.
It really changes how you think about serving God.
Okay.
It's not about following rules out of fear of punishment, but about responding to his love.
Yeah, it's coming from a totally different place.
Right.
It's not about like obligation or fear. It's about love.
Yeah.
And that makes me think about something else that they highlighted in the parable of the 10 virgins.
Right.
The fact that all the virgins, like both the wise and the foolish, they all had lamps.
Right.
They all fell asleep waiting for the bridegroom.
Right.
But that like crucial difference, it didn't become clear until midnight.
Exactly.
So like even those who appear to be really devout may not actually be like genuinely prepared. Right?
Yeah, that's such a good observation. It's not just about how things look on the outside.
Right.
It's about what's happening on the inside. What's fueling that inner flame?
Exactly. It's not about just the show. It's about the substance.
Yeah.
It's about the fuel that's keeping that fire going.
Yeah. And going back to the oil analogy, the Bevers believe that the oil represents like a complete surrender to God.
Okay.
A willingness to give everything, not just like a portion of our lives.
Yeah. So it's not just dipping your toes in the water. It's like diving in head first.
Exactly. And they illustrate this with this really powerful analogy. Imagine those bridesmaids, all 10 of them, walking into a sporting goods store. The foolish ones, they go up to the counter, they're like, I want that lamp, I want to be saved. Mm. They're focused on just the outward appearance of faith.
Right. They just want the accessory,
right.
Basically.
Exactly. But the wise virgins, they come in, they pull out like all their savings, their possessions. They're like, I want that lamp and I want all the oil you have.
Yeah. They're committed. They're all in.
They're not holding anything back.
That's the difference.
And that difference, they argue, that's what separates genuine readiness from, just going through the motions.
Right.
And it reminds me of that moment in the parable where Jesus says to the foolish virgins, like, I don't know you.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, that's powerful. It's not just about saying the right words or looking the part. It's about like really surrendering.
Yeah.
Really investing everything you have in that relationship.
Totally. And they remind us, watch therefore for, neither the day nor the hour in which the Son of Man is coming. Mm-hmm. It's about constant vigilance.
Right. Yeah. Always be ready.
Yeah.
But it's encouraging to know that it's not like a one and done thing, right? Like even if you feel like you've strayed.
Yeah.
There's always a way back.
Absolutely. They acknowledge that it's so easy to get lukewarm.
Yeah.
To let life distract us from what's truly important.
Right. Right. The world's got a lot of distractions.
Yeah. But God's always there to help us rekindle that flame.
Okay.
He's ready to meet us where we are and guide us back.
It's good to be reminded of that.
Yeah.
That no matter how far we've strayed, there's always a path back.
Always. And, they encourage listeners to take a look at their own spiritual journeys, like really examine your heart and honestly assess your level of commitment.
So it's not just about passively accepting things. It's about like taking action.
Exactly.
Looking inside and seeing where you might need to make some changes.
Right.
To figure out what it really means to be prepared.
Right. Not just in our spiritual lives, but also in how we live in the world.
Okay. That's something to think about. I think we're going to delve into that even more in part 2 of this deep dive.
For sure. Yeah. So, picking up where we left off.
Right.
It's interesting to think about, like, if we actually believe the second coming is close.
Yeah.
Shouldn't how we live reflect that, like in intangible ways?
Yeah, that's a good question, right?
Yeah.
It's one thing to talk about the spiritual prep.
Yeah.
But what about the practical stuff?
Yeah.
Like, what does it actually look like to live as if Jesus could come back like any day now?
That's the tricky part, isn't it? You know, the Beveres, they don't give us like a checklist, so there's a lot of room for different interpretations.
Yeah, and that can be like exciting, but also kind of scary, right?
Right.
Like on the one hand, you get to decide what it means for you, but on the other hand, it's like, where do you even start? Like, are we talking about like stockpiling supplies and learning survival skills and building, underground bunkers?
I mean, that's one way to think about it, depending on how you see the second coming playing out. But maybe there are other ways to approach it.
Okay, I'm all ears. What other ways are there?
Well, like instead of focusing on those external things, those preps,
right?
Maybe we should be asking ourselves, like, what values, what priorities would guide us if the world was really about to change that much?
Okay, yeah. So it's like an internal shift that happens when you really believe something is coming. Like, would we be more focused on things like community, on relationships, on sharing what we have, on taking care of people in need?
Exactly. Like if we believe in, the message of love and compassion that Jesus preached,
right?
Wouldn't those things become even more important?
Yeah.
In a time of change and maybe even chaos?
Absolutely. Yeah, it's about putting those principles into action, right? Like treating each other with kindness and generosity and creating this sense of unity and support. Like building a world that actually reflects the values of the kingdom that we believe is coming.
I love that. The idea that getting ready isn't just about getting ourselves ready, but about making the world a better place.
Yeah.
A world that's more just, more compassionate, more in line with what Jesus taught.
It's a beautiful idea. It's not just about every man for himself, It's about working together for everyone's good.
Yeah, exactly. And that makes me think about like forgiveness and reconciliation.
Oh, wow.
Like what role would those play?
Yeah, that's a huge one. If we really think a time of judgment is coming.
Right.
Shouldn't we be like mending those broken relationships, seeking forgiveness, offering grace to people who have hurt us?
It makes you stop and think, right?
Yeah.
Like if we're going to be held accountable for our actions, maybe now's the time to address those things where we've messed up.
Right.
To let go of bitterness and resentment and try to understand each other and reconcile.
Yeah. Like imagine a world where people were actively working to heal those divisions, to bridge those gaps and just create a more harmonious society. That'd be pretty amazing.
Yeah, it would. It would be a real testament to the power of faith to change things.
Absolutely.
Wow.
It's not just about preparing for the afterlife, but for a better life here and now.
Yeah. And that brings us to something else that's really practical and often gets overlooked. Our stuff, our possessions. Like how would that change?
Yeah, it's a good question. If we truly believe that all this stuff we accumulate, all these material things, if we believe that they don't really matter in the grand scheme of things, would we be more willing to let go of them, to focus on things that actually matter?
Yeah, like it really makes you look at your priorities, doesn't it?
Yeah.
Like sharing, helping, living more simply, living sustainably.
Right.
All those things, they take on a whole new meaning.
Yeah.
If you believe this world is coming to an end.
It's not about deprivation, right? It's about focusing on the right things.
Exactly. It's about realizing that true wealth isn't in things, but in relationships, in community, in in our connection to something bigger than ourselves.
Yeah, it's about living intentionally with purpose, realizing that our choices have consequences, not just for us, but for everyone and everything around us.
And that brings us to another important piece.
Okay.
The idea of stewardship.
Ah, yes, taking care of the planet, being responsible with the resources we've been given.
Right, exactly. And wouldn't that become even more crucial?
Yeah.
If we truly believed the world as we know it was ending.
Absolutely. It's about recognizing that we're all connected, that what we do affects the planet and future generations.
Yeah.
It's about living sustainably in harmony with nature. Working to protect all the beauty and the diversity that God created.
Yeah. So, practically speaking, that could mean things like reducing how much we consume, choosing eco-friendly options, supporting conservation efforts, even advocating for policies that protect the environment.
Yeah, it's like we're not just prepping for ourselves, but for the future.
Right.
For the world that comes after us. It's about creating a legacy, leaving things better than we found them.
Yeah.
And that ties back to what we were talking about earlier, the idea that getting ready isn't just about saving ourselves.
Yeah.
It's about building a world that reflects the kingdom we're waiting for.
Exactly. It's about putting love, compassion, justice, stewardship into action.
Yeah.
In everything we do. It's about making a world worthy of the return of the king. It's not about waiting passively, but about actually creating something better.
Yeah, it's not a one-time thing, but an ongoing process, right? A process of change and growth.
And that process forces us to ask ourselves some tough questions.
Yeah.
Questions that make us really think about why we do what we do and what's really important to us.
Like what are we willing to give up for what we believe in?
Yeah, exactly. And how far are we willing to go to actually live out the values of the kingdom we say we're waiting for?
Yeah. And how can we make sure that getting ready doesn't make us fearful and isolated, but instead leads us to more love, more unity, more compassion?
That's a good question. These are questions that challenge us to move beyond just thinking about it, to actually do something, to live it out.
Yeah, it's about recognizing that getting ready involves not just our souls, but our actions, our relationships, how we interact with the world around us.
It's a journey that requires a lot from us. Courage, humility, and a willingness to keep checking our priorities, making sure they line up with what we value most.
So, we've talked about a lot in this deep dive about, getting ready for the second coming, spiritually, practically, all these different things. But I feel like there's something we haven't really touched on yet. And it's kind of a big one.
Yeah, I think you're right. We've been talking about what we can do.
Yeah.
But not so much about the things that are out of our control.
Exactly. Like we can prepare all we want.
Yeah.
But we still don't know what the second coming will actually look like,
right?
Or what it'll mean for the world.
Exactly. And the Beveres are basing their ideas on biblical prophecy, on their interpretations, and those are always up for debate.
Of course.
Different people understand those things in different ways.
Absolutely. So it seems like there's always going to be this element of mystery, this ambiguity around this whole concept. And that can feel, I don't know, kind of unsettling, but also kind of exciting.
Yeah, totally. Unsettling because, we like to have all the answers.
Yeah, right.
We like to be in control.
We like to know what's going on.
Right. But exciting because it reminds us that we're talking about something so much bigger than us.
Yeah.
Something we can't possibly fully understand.
Right. Like it forces us to admit that we're not in control,
right,
and to surrender to something bigger than ourselves.
Yeah, to lean into faith even when things feel uncertain.
Yeah. And maybe that's actually one of the most important parts of preparing, learning to let go of that need for certainty.
I think so. Like cultivating a deep sense of trust, a belief that even when things are uncertain, even when things feel scary, we're not alone. That there's a plan, a divine plan, even if we can't see it.
It's about having that faith that things are going to be okay, that we're being taken care of.
Even if we don't know exactly how.
Exactly, yeah. And that kind of trust, it gives us hope, right? Wow. It lets us face the unknown and not be afraid.
And remember that even if things don't go the way we expect, we're still in God's hands.
That's a good reminder. We don't have to have it all figured out.
Nope.
We can just be present,
Yeah.
Live each day and trust that whatever comes, we'll be able to handle it.
I think that's maybe the biggest takeaway from all of this.
Yeah.
From this whole discussion about the second coming.
Yeah.
True readiness, it's not about having all the answers.
Right.
It's about having that trust, that surrender, that unwavering faith.
It's about letting go of the need to control everything and just embracing the mystery.
Yeah. Recognizing that we're part of something so much bigger than ourselves and having faith that there's a purpose to it all.
Wow. I think you just summed it up beautifully. We started out with all these questions, and maybe that's the point.
Maybe the point is not to find all the answers,
right,
but to learn to live with the questions.
To be okay with not knowing.
Yeah. To embrace the mystery.
To trust.
And to live each day as a gift.
To make the most of it.
To love, to serve, to make a difference.
Because in the end, it doesn't really matter if the second coming is tomorrow or 1,000 years from now. What matters is that we're living in a way that reflects the values of the kingdom.
Yeah, that we're living out our faith.
Yes, exactly. That our lives are marked by love, compassion, justice.
And that faith that carries us through.
That keeps us going.
Yeah, through all the challenges, all the uncertainties.
Well, thank you so much for joining us on this journey.
It's been a pleasure.
It's been a real deep dive, and I hope it's left you with more to think about.
Yeah, and maybe a renewed sense of purpose.
And a heart full of hope.
Absolutely.